I'll call to order the Regional Council meeting for Thursday, February the 8th. Roll call, all present except Mayor Crombie, Councillor Yanika, and Councillor Raz on illness, and, welcome. And Councillor Starr, personal matter. All other councillors are present. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest pertaining to today's agenda? None. Approval of the minutes and of the January 25th, 2018 Regional Council meeting. Moved by Councillor Kovac, second by Councillor McFadden. All those in favor? Carried. Approval of the agenda. I just wanted to note that there is a letter in our folders that will be added. I think Councillor or Mayor Thompson wanted to add an item.
Yeah, I do. If we could bring forward the resolution 8.1 to be dealt with today, I would like to. I got a motion here that I'd like to bring forward concerning that.
All right, we'll add that under 8.1. Oh, it's on. Oh, it's okay. Councillor Sporvieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a request from a resident to be added to the agenda to speak on item 14.3. Ms. Christine Massey would like to speak on that item.
14.3.
I'd like to add her as a delegation.
Yes. Yeah. I'd need a separate motion for approval for that because it doesn't fall.
I'd like to put a motion forward to add her as a delegation.
All right. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Palashi? Okay, I'll call that vote now then. All in favor? Opposed?
It's not a recorded vote, but I'll just need to count.
Okay. We'll go again. All in favor?
All in favor?
On a point of order, Chair Dale.
Yes.
Over here.
I'm looking.
Sorry.
I see you.
This is a matter that's on the printed agenda. How can we refuse a delegation on that? I understand if somebody wants to delegate council and the matter's not on the agenda, that there's a process where they apply and we have a decision of whether or not to agree to accept the delegation. But if it's a matter that's on the printed agenda, how can we refuse it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's a process, as you've indicated,
But the process is for somebody who wishes to approach and delegate counsel.
Right.
For a matter that's not on the agenda, and we have one here, I think at the end of this agenda today, where we
there's
get
a
to
process.
decide if they're going to be
What's
on a
the
future
process?
agenda as a delegation.
Well, you're correct on that, but you have to give proper notice to be on the agenda. No? If it read to a matter?
Well,
I'm going to ask the clerk to explain.
The agenda is draft until council votes on the agenda. It's up to council to approve the agenda as draft presented to council, and any additions do need to be voted on. So I think that all Chair Dale's doing is voting on the items to be added to the agenda. The agenda can be changed by council at the beginning, approval of agenda at any time. It's a draft agenda that the clerk prepares and sends out, and it's for council to approve.
and I understand that, Madam Clerk. And maybe it's just a difference of how we do business at the City of Brampton, but if it's on the printed agenda, then we generally don't refuse delegations that a matter. When else are they going to speak on it? Anyways, that's fine. I accept your ruling.
Well, can I just speak on that too? Yeah, thank you. And my understanding has always been that if it's on the agenda, the public can ask to be heard. I don't know if there's a written policy here, but at the City of Brampton, that's the way we operate. So if there is a policy, I'd like to know where is the policy and where it speaks to, if it speaks to it. So, Madam Clerk, if you can just verify what you're ruling.
I'm not ruling, but the advice that I'm giving is that it's an approval of the agenda, which is a process that we go through at every council meeting, and the agenda is to be approved the draft goes out to council and any additions are voted on.
Well, I
at the
understand
approval
that,
of
but
the agenda.
that should be in the rule of
It is.
And I like, if you can, because the resident is very determined and eager to present to us this morning, took time off work to come here. And, so it's just for her benefit, it should be spelled out where it says in the rules that as you have stated.
And just for clarification, I'm not trying to hold up anybody from speaking to council. I'm just trying to follow procedure. And it was raised, so.
Well, certainly, if it's in the procedural booklet, that's fine. But my understanding was that at least all the years I've been on council.
It's on page 13 of the procedure bylaw.
See, I get criticized when I follow the procedure. I get criticized when I don't follow the procedure, like, you know. Oh, yeah, I get challenged. It's been fun.
It doesn't say anything about delegations on this.
It's
don't.
approval of the agenda.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
discussion.
It still doesn't. It doesn't make any reference to delegations here.
She's got it there in her book. I don't think
So
This one here.
Following its approval.
Yeah. Well,
We haven't approved
that's
it.
only to.
Okay, yeah. Councillor Sprovieri, do you want to move, oh, Councillor Moore, did you want to go back on? Oh, your name's, Councillor Sprovieri, do you
Yeah.
want to move the agenda with that added on?
Yes.
Okay, could I have a seconder? Councillor Palashi. All right, then I'll read the motion. That the agenda for February 8th, 2018 Regional Council meeting include a communication from a resident of the Region of Peel regarding the report of the Integrity Commissioner listed as item 13.5 on the February 8th, 2018 Regional Council agenda to be dealt with under items related to enterprise programs and services, item 14.4. And then we'll add also that the delegate be, Ms. Massey be heard? Is that right? Yeah. And further, that the agenda for the February 8th, 2018 Regional Council meeting be approved as amended. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carries. All right. That moves us to our first delegation then. Jeffrey Abrams and Janice Atwood-Pitkowski, co-principals, Principals Integrity, introducing the to Regional Council, the Region of Peel Integrity Commissioner, and Lobbyist Registrar. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of council. Yeah, I am Jeffrey Abrams. To my right, to your left, Janice Atwood-Pitkowski. We are your Integrity Commissioner. We are the co-principals of a partnership called Principals Integrity. The purpose of us appearing here today is simply to provide a bit of an introduction to ourselves, and give you a little bit of background and highlights how we might approach this role. So, Janice, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Janice, and I've been in the municipal sector for over 30 years. And I know many of you through some of my past work, and many of you through new work now with Principals Integrity. I was with the province and the city of Brampton and the city of Mississauga, and then the city of Vaughan, and most recently I retired from the city of Hamilton this past year. And so in deciding to proceed with a career to assist in integrity and ethical matters, Jeffrey and I joined forces in order to create Principals Integrity.
So I've been in the municipal sector my entire career. Started as a municipal solicitor with Metropolitan Toronto, which then existed. And at around amalgamation, just after amalgamation, I entered the clerk's world and then continued in that role. Janice and I actually worked together at Vaughan. Janice was my boss, and a good boss. We decided that we would continue to work with each other. So we've been appointed as your Integrity Commissioner, and it might interest you to know that what you've done through the employment bylaw is brought into force, so to speak, the provisions of Bill 68, which I'm sure you've heard about, which have become mandatory for all municipalities in Ontario as of March 1st, 2019. So what that means is that as of today, Janice and I, through Principles Integrity, will be assisting the region in developing its code of conduct. We'll be reviewing that and likely will be coming forward to you with some recommendations for change. We'll be, we are your lobbyist registrar as well. We'll be able to provide advice to you on both code of conduct matters and on Municipal Conflict of Interest Act matters, which I understand is new. And we'll be carrying out those functions set out in the bill as of the date of our appointment of a few days ago. So we did welcome this opportunity just to allow you to put some faces to names. We will be, a number of you we've met through previous roles. We hope to meet those who we haven't in the coming days and weeks. And if there are any questions of us, we're happy to address them now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I'd like to really welcome you here to Peel Region as the new commissioners. I have worked with Janice in the past. I never met you before, but I know that Janice will be a great commissioner. She's a very straightforward person, and I think she will call an ace and do the job extremely well. So glad to see you on board, and welcome. Thank you very much, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning and welcome. Just a couple of questions, because I seem to have a little bit of trouble understanding the whole Bill 68. It's fairly new. There are some gray areas in there, and maybe you can provide some clarification for me. Under Bill 68, I think one of the things it talks about, and this is where I need some clarification because it's a little gray, is it a requirement under Bill 68 that your integrity commissioners hold a law degree?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Although I would hasten to add that we both hold law degrees.
Okay, so it's not a requirement. In your opinion, as folks who hold law degrees, do you think it's best that your integrity commissioners are people that actually hold a law degree? Because from my understanding, when you're dealing with certain matters, there are things in there that I think require some legal expertise. So what would be your opinion on that?
Well, we may have a somewhat biased view, but it's our opinion that holding a law degree is probably fundamentally a good idea. The role does now involve, with many municipalities have moved forward already with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act provisions coming under the Integrity Commissioner, and Bill 68 will make that mandatory effective March 2019 for those who decide not to implement early. Peel is implementing early along with other municipalities. For that reason alone, we think it's fundamentally important to have a law degree, to engage in providing legal opinions as to what constitutes really a statutory interpretation, Municipal Conflict of Interest Act.
Perfect, thank you. And one final question. Do you think, in your opinion, that when reviewing council codes of conduct that we have someone with a law degree or a law background in law looking at that or working on that?
I'll answer by first giving a bit more background on our experience. Janice and I brought in the Code of Conduct in Vaughan quite some time ago, 2008 or 2009, and assisted counsel, I should say, in bringing forward a Code of Conduct. And through working with that city's first Integrity Commissioner and its subsequent Integrity Commissioner and dealing with the issues that came forward, We gained experience as consumers of Integrity Commissioner services before we became providers of Integrity Commissioner services. Some of you may have heard me say that in the past. We think it's fundamentally important. In fact, it's our unfair advantage in this field. So that experience, the coupling of municipal experience plus experience as legal professionals, coupled together is, I think, what allows us to assist the region in developing its code of conduct.
Perfect. Thank you.
That exhausts my list. You got off easy today. No.
Thank you very much.
We wish you well and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
A motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Moore, second by Councillor Miles. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Janice Baker, City Manager and Chief Administrative Officer, City of Mississauga, providing an update on the Greater Toronto Airport Authority and matters regarding privatization.
Chair Dale,
Yes.
if I might have
Councillor
permission to
Parrish.
speak, I would like to encourage council to give Janice as much time as she needs. This is about a $33 million presentation. So I think every minute that she's here will be valuable to us, just so she's not interrupted at the end of her presentation.
So are you putting a motion forward to go beyond the 5 minutes? All in, the seconder for that, Councillor Palacio, all in favor? Carried. Welcome, Janice.
Good morning, Chair Dale and members of Regional Council. I think this might be a first for me to actually be a delegate at Regional Council. And I am pleased to be here to talk a bit about some of the historic challenges and issues that the City of Mississauga and the region of Peel have had with having one of Canada's largest airports right in our boundaries. Of course, we all recognize and understand the tremendous economic impact that the airport has, and that's very positive. We understand the business investment and how it supports business, but certainly airports do come with a variety of challenges, and I am probably going to focus on that. So I apologize if this presentation sounds overly negative, but I was instructed by Councillor Parrish I had to bring the whole shebang. So here it is. I think I've covered that. So these are some of the topics that I'm going to go through, and you can see it's a relatively long list, and there are some interesting pieces along the way, I think, in terms of just the challenge of having a large federally regulated facility within the city and within the region. So to talk about that aspect first, I mean, we are all familiar with some of the federal facilities that are often located in Canadian municipalities, whether it's regional postal distribution centers, railways, you know, the challenges we have with cell towers. Some of us have got crown land that may be operating in different ways. However, a principle at the federal government and one that's been enshrined in legislation is that municipalities that are hosting significant federal facilities really should be operating under the principle of being no worse off. In other words, taxation revenue, compliance, or at least respect for municipal land use plans and how the municipality wants the federal facility to integrate into its local framework is something that the federal government have said they will largely work with the municipality, and in the case of the taxation piece, literally replicate through the PILTs, through the payments in lieu of taxes system, the taxes that a municipality would otherwise be owed if that land were owed privately. And I think that's an important principle, an important point that kind of informs some of the pieces that I'm going to talk about following on from this. So historically, the areas in which we have had I'm going to say the most challenging conversations with the GTAA are typically around development. I think for those around the table who may not be aware, but the GTAA owns a significant amount of surplus land. So land that is not actually utilized or designated to be utilized for airside operations. And on those lands, if you drive along Dairy Road, for example, you would see a large FedEx facility. There are other developments that look, as you're driving down the roadway, to be private development, but in fact they are located on airport property, and in many cases that means that they have not necessarily always paid full DCs or complied with all of the municipal requirements in order to locate in that location. And the airport similarly has got surplus land along the 401, so you may have seen some development there of car dealerships, and they are acquiring land. So they have recently acquired the International Center. And while as yet they have not pulled that land under the Crown lease, so it's still they've set it up under a separate corporate structure. And so it will continue to pay property taxes as it always has. There is really nothing to prevent them from, at some point in the future, if they have other reasons or reasons related to their core business for doing so, to pull that property in. So to the extent that they have surplus lands and they seem to be acquiring additional land, I think it is something that we need to be aware of and pay some attention to. So in this particular case, we have had we had to challenge the GTAA back into, so as you'll see, this is an older case, but I think it sets a precedent for where we are going forward. So back in 2000, there were new facilities built at the airport, some of which, in our view, they should have paid DCs for. In order to settle that particular issue, we actually had to take the airport to court, and we've done that a couple of different times. And in fact, while the court found that the actual development levy bylaw did not apply to the airport, they did establish the principle that DCs should be paid through the application of the payments in lieu of taxes. So we actually have a court decision that establishes that the airport should pay the equivalent of city and regional DCs for surplus for construction and buildings on their property that are not airside related. And I think, again, that's an important principle. And similarly, we know that there are a number of tenants, businesses that operate within the airport. There are restaurants, there are small retail outlets, and the GTA argued that those tenants were captured under the broader payment in lieu of taxes system that covered property taxes. The city and the region held a different view that, in fact, those third-party tenants were required, were required to pay property taxes as any other business. Again, we were forced to go to court to make our case, and in that case, in fact, we were successful. And so since 2011, all of the businesses that are located within the airport property, in fact, do pay property taxes to the city and to the region, as all other businesses do within the city of Mississauga. But again, I think the challenge we have had is it's been very difficult to negotiate and settle these issues with the airport on what I would call a more let's sit at the table and figure this out. In many cases, we have had to resort to court challenges in order to win the day. As I mentioned, or in the lease agreement that exists between the GTAA and Transport Canada, there actually is a requirement that the GTAA negotiate an agreement with the City of Mississauga in good faith to talk about, and I've made these points earlier, that development is in harmony with surrounding land uses. We've made several efforts to kickstart these negotiations. We've come close in a couple of cases. In 2007, we started to reach agreement at least on individual developments. We could not get an overarching agreement around development, but we did get agreement on a couple of different developments that happened on the airport land, and then in those cases, the GTAA, or the tenant in this case, were required to pay full DCs to the city and the region. But I think our view is that we should not be negotiating these on a one-off basis. And here are a couple of other examples where, again, either because the development required access. I know in the case of Toyotoshi, there were some easements and access issues that kind of gave us some leverage in those particular cases that we were able to use to get the DCs paid. In the case that's noted up there, the Panettone property management issue, under our rules, and I think this would be true in the other municipalities as well, DCs are owed when you pull your building permit. So this particular property started to develop I believe last year, so the permit would have been pulled in the 2016-17 timeframe and would have been subject to the 2014 DC bylaw in our case. The GTAA has decided that they gave them permission to build roughly 8-9 years ago under the old 09 bylaw, and so they don't owe us $12.4 million, they owe us $6.8 million. And again, I think this is a case where while there's been some level of cooperation, it's been somewhat selective, and it varies development to development. We know that there's a Tim Hortons on the airport property that technically we've never been notified of. We know they paid no fees or development levies on that particular facility, and yet they are operating on GTAA lands. So I think this has been some of the source of frustration for us over the years. Again, some limited compliance, but selective, and I think our goal would be to, within a larger MOU, establish a process and a practice that would allow each of these developments to be treated in a consistent manner. Am I going forward? I am. The other item where we're currently engaged in a court battle with the Greater Toronto Airports Authority is on the stormwater charge that the city has implemented. It is our legal opinion, and we've engaged an expert to review that the GTAA is subject to the stormwater charge. While they certainly have significant stormwater facilities on their property and they manage some of their own stormwater, and there's a credit system that would give them relief for that, nonetheless, ultimately stormwater from the airport ends up in the Etobicoke Creek and other facilities that the city owns and maintains. Again, we really have had little success, notwithstanding that the GTAA actually participated in the community engagement that we did around the stormwater charge, which was significant leading up to the approval of the charge by council. They've never followed the process of applying for credits. They've just simply refused to pay. They now owe in excess of $5 million. So we have filed a statement of claim, and I presume at some point, and we all understand court processes can be very slow, we will work through that and hopefully be successful. The payment in lieu of taxes, which applies to the property tax portion of the airport, was amended by the provincial government in 2001 to move from taxes based on market value assessment to taxes based on a per passenger formula. And the rates that you see on the screen, these are the 5 airports that were affected by that particular legislation, and they really backed into the rate by taking the property taxes that were being paid under the old market value assessment system, dividing it by the passenger count from 3 years previous, which was what was available through Statistics Canada. And therefore, each airport really got a customized rate based on their historic property tax payments. Those rates have not changed since 2001, so there's been no ability for the municipality to influence those rates, and there's nothing built into the rates that allows them to be adjusted for any level of inflation. In addition, there was a cap applied, and we have been in a capped position for 9 of the last 11 years. But of course, there's been no cap on decreases. So when we went through 9/11 and SARS, and there was some very, negative impact on passenger travel at the airport, those numbers dropped dramatically, but then were capped as they came back up. So we have been asking the provincial government to review this PILT framework. We believe, first of all, that the rate should not be frozen in time, and it's been frozen now for 16 years, so certainly it's time to look at it. There should be some consistency in terms of the rates that are charged, so can we come up with a better formula? And in addition, the rate really only recognizes passenger traffic. It does not recognize cargo, and based on information that we've received from Statistics Canada, there's over 400,000 tons of cargo that goes through Pearson annually, so you can imagine the impact on our roads from truck traffic and goods movement. And that there should be some regard for cargo in the formula that's applied to the airport. Our estimate over the time that this framework has been in place, that we're probably short somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 million over the years that this formula has been capped. So here's the current tax. You can see the tax if the cap were removed on the current year. And then if we looked at over the life of the airport and, the passenger count being current, because we are in a 3-year lag on the passenger numbers that we're permitted to use, you can see even today, if you just looked at the 2017 PILT, there would be an additional $4 million flowing to the city and to the region. So, and we think in the interests of fairness, this system absolutely needs to be looked at, modernized, and brought up to a level that is more fair to the municipalities, both the city and the region. There's been a lot of conversation about the Regional Transit Center, and we recognize that there is clearly a need to support the airport and travel in and out of the airport. In fact, we provide, and I believe Brampton does as well, bus service into the airport. We know the investment that was made in Up Express. But again, what impact is that Regional Transit Center going to make on the financial circumstances of the city? Because if private sector lands are going to be acquired in order to build out the regional transit center, at some point that will have a net loss to us in terms of property taxes. And I think we just want to make sure that these impacts are understood and managed as we go forward. With respect to privatization, I mean, there's limited information available on this. We know that it's an issue that's under consideration. We really don't know what that model would look like. Certainly, we would want to have a municipal voice at the table, and we believe that would be critical in any discussions around privatization. We don't have a national airport strategy. We think there is room for better communication and negotiation, some level of control. And I recognize that it's a challenge. This is a major transportation infrastructure model. I don't think any of the municipalities want to get involved in regulating airplanes. I think what we really want is just to feel that we're being treated fairly and we're not being disadvantaged. I mean, the airport covers roughly 10% of the property area in the city of Mississauga, so that is a very significant facility. And I think from a relationship perspective, we would hope that we can move forward in a more positive way, where we keep approaching the GTAA with respect to negotiating the MOU. So we are working on it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I don't have any speakers. Councillor, or Mayor Thompson first.
Good morning, Janice, and thank you for your report. And just so you know, we have the Brampton Flying Club, which is much smaller scale, but similar. We do have a good working relationship, but again, they're not paying DCs or different things with what we have. They don't need even building permits. So it's a challenge going forward. My question is I know when you see things through across municipalities across Canada, this is an issue not just here, everywhere. Have you been working through the FCM at this point?
Yes, we have, and so we're well aware of the work that FCM's been doing. And we also have reached out to other airports across Canada. So, for example, we know that the City of Calgary and the City of Ottawa both have MOUs with their airports, and they've provided us with copies of those. So we have examples of how these relationships can work. Some of our staff, I know Mary Ellen Bench, who's our solicitor, has reached out to FCM, and I think has been part in the past of staff discussions around just describing some of these challenges and what some of the solutions might be. So absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Parrish.
Well, thank you very much, Janice. You didn't make it sound quite as grueling as I would have liked. Because down in Mississauga, we have dubbed the GTAA the Vatican. They operate on their own terms. They put up electronic signs on the edge of the highway when we didn't allow electronic signs in our city. We've since changed. This is a really good year to try to get them to pay a little bit more attention and come to the table and do the MOUs, pay their DCs, recalculate their PILTs. And it's a good year because the provincial election's coming up. And I already spoke to Charles Sousa, and he said, well, does Vancouver pay full rate? I said, yes. Does Montreal pay full rate? Yes. They all pay property level taxes. And he said, well, how come these guys don't? And I said, because Mr. Harris did that many years ago, and you guys have never fixed it. So he's already sent people to meet with us, and he's going to, you can't change the legislation, but you can change the rate of payment. So he's looking at a phasing in so that we can try to fix that a little bit. But I think this is the year you make a big fuss because they're wanting to give us little bits and pieces that make us a little happier. I also hope that the region will support our plan to try and get the MOU in place, to try and put some pressure on the airport, particularly Brampton, because you're right next door to us, and obviously Caledon with its flying club is seriously involved as well. But I just think it's outrageous. Malton is right, my little town of Malton's right there. The traffic going through there, 19,000 trucks a day taking freight into that airport. And the roads are being resurfaced all the time. So it's costing us a fortune to have that lovely little gem there. And then when you try to meet with them, they blame our staff. They say, oh, we've been trying to get an MOU with you for years. And they won't even sit down at the table. So fingers crossed. One of the things I'm hoping is we'll give them a little while. If they don't come around, I think we're going to try to hire a a really good lobby firm, and maybe we could rent those big signs that they've got hanging over the highway saying the airport doesn't pay its fair share of taxes, don't fly here, or do something really outrageous. We'll rent their own because they're done by an agency, so I don't think they can veto us from putting some ads up there. But I would like to, after Chris speaks, just move a motion that we endorse Mississauga's fight, and it's the region's fight as well, because you're being shortchanged on the PILTs. It's 4,000 acres down there, and I was an MP when we had Mr. Galliano was a former municipal politician, and he came in and he said, one of the things I want to fix while I'm here is the way the feds pay their PILTs. They just pay what they've got left over at the end of the year. If they've had a bad year, you get nothing. If they had a good year, you get a few cents. So he made PILTs be equal to market value taxes. And then Ontario changed it for 6 airports, not the rest. And no one's ever done anything about it. So it's a big fight. I think we're on solid ground. Our staff reports are excellent. We have got amazing good people working on this. So after Chris speaks, I'd just like to put a motion that the region supports our efforts.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fonseca.
Thank you through you, Chair Dale. Thank you very much, Janice, for being here and for the presentation and for all the work that yourself and also Mary Ellen has put into presentation and discussion. I'm happy to support Councillor Parrish's motion. Just to your point, Janice, with regards to integrating into the local framework, I think that is something that is essential when it comes to obviously Toronto Pearson, but also the airports right across the country. And also with regards to what is on the screen right now, and to Mayor Thompson, to your point, there currently is no Canadian Airports Act or a National Airport Strategy. However, at FCM in the fall, there was an emergency resolution that came forward with regards to FCM supporting local municipalities being at the table in the discussion around privatization, and we passed that at the City of Mississauga. We also passed that here at the Region of Peel. So I want to thank everyone for that. And I don't know if this is the appropriate time as well to put forward a motion that we would be in support of or bring it to FCM. I can do it at a later date. We do have FCM meeting in March. So I could work with clerks to bring something forward at an appropriate time or put a notice of motion right now, just with regards to the Region of Peel supporting a Canadian Airports Act. I don't know if today is the appropriate time to do that. But I think the presentation here today shows that both at the local municipal level, but then also at the region, we could really benefit from a Canadian Airports Act, and FCM would be the appropriate body to support that right across the country. So I think that would only strengthen what has been said here today, and both moving forward with the airport for the local municipalities, but also the region. And to Councillor Parrish's point, to the fight or debate that we're going to have with the airport. So I don't know if today is appropriate to do that, or if we can do, okay. Thank you.
The clerk's just trying to put it together for you. Actually, what I could do first then is bring forward 14.2, which is just the letter. It's for receipt. That's in relation to the airport. If Councillor Parrish would move that and Councillor Fonseca second that, it's just for receipt. All those in favor? Carried. And we're just... Councillor Parrish.
I think the motion should read something like that the Region of Peel supports Mississauga's efforts to have the GTAA enter into a memorandum of understanding with the city and region, including paying fair DCs and improved PILTs. Sure. If we want to add anything else, Janice? That covers it? Yeah.
Okay, we could take it as that, and then it would just add in further that the region support efforts to be consulted and work with FCM in relation to a Canadian Airports Act.
I think that's two different
suffice?
motions.
You want it separate? Okay. Okay, we'll take them separate. The first one as was
That the
moved by
Region of
Councillor-
Appeals supports Mississauga's efforts to have the GTAA enter a memorandum of understanding with the city and the region, including paying fair DCs and improved payment in lieu of taxes.
So I don't think the region would be a signatory to the MOU, but certainly we would protect their interests through it. That wasn't originally, it was with.
Okay, I
it's
can
with
leave
the
and region
city.
out.
Yeah, it just makes things a lot more complicated. I think David would agree. Yeah.
Okay, and if we're getting fair DCs, you'll be getting fair DCs at the region.
That would be the intent for sure, so it's not to disadvantage the region in
Correct.
any way. We would make sure they get their
You good with
share.
that, David?
Perfect.
Perfect.
So that's been moved by Councillor Pear, seconded by Councillor Fonseca. Recorded votes required. Thanks. What about the second? What's this? That carries. And the second one is the motion that you put forward with respect. Okay, all in favor of the second motion then, with respect to bringing it to FCM's attention? Yeah, that's recorded too.
They didn't vote.
On the second motion, waiting for a vote. That carries? That carries. Thank you. Thank you, Janice, for your presentation. Okay. Moved by Councillor Parrish and seconded by Councillor Fonseca. Receipt of the deputation then? All in favor? Carried. Brings us to Christine Massey. You come forward. This is in relation to 14.3, which was Mr. Swayze's letter that indicated it was his final report.
Good morning. I'm Christine Massey, spokesperson for fluoride-free-peel.ca, and the public can find us online. I wanted to address you this morning because in your agenda you have a letter from the Integrity Commissioner, or I guess he's the former Integrity Commissioner, Mr. Swayze, regarding his activities of the last year. According to his letter, he mentioned that his second complaint that he received was against all members of council except for Councillor Sprovieri and related to council's support of fluoridation of water. I felt that this was a little misleading, and I wanted to come and clarify this for you and for the public record. My complaint was not simply about your support for adding carcinogenic brain, tooth, bone, gut, endocrine, enzyme, and mitochondria poisoning industrial waste fluoride acid to our baby bottles via our drinking water in such a concentration that 385 milliliters of our drinking water contain the exact same amount that dentists, the CDC, Health Canada, and poison control centers all insist must be spit out by young children when they're brushing their teeth, the same 1/4 milligram of fluoride. My complaint was also about your illegally closed meeting of January 2016. It was about the fact that you had indefinitely suspended the Water Fluoridation Committee before it had completed its tasks. And then, this was early last year, and then a month or so later, you passed a motion blocking me from giving a delegation that I had already submitted and was here to present to you with many important questions. And you passed a motion saying that all communications on the topic of water fluoridation would be referred to your indefinitely suspended committee, thereby pulling the rug out on any communications whatsoever. I contacted the regional clerk to clarify if this was only pertained to communications to council or if it also applied to communications to staff, and she indicated that it was broad, far-reaching motion and gave me the impression that it covered all communications. So at that point, I stopped asking questions of anybody. Because of this, and this was all done on the premise of waiting for a reply from Health Minister Eric Hoskins to a letter you had sent to him, and it's now, I believe, almost a year later, and he still hasn't replied. And I can tell you from experience on another issue that I work on that Dr. Hoskins has a history of not replying to important letters, even when they're sent by legal representatives, and even when his staff contact you and say that he will get back to you by a certain date, he just doesn't sometimes. So this prevented, and all the while you're continuing to fluoridate our water. So this prevented the public from getting answers regarding many things. For example, your bizarre reference to non-existent so-called provincial standards for the addition of fluoride to our drinking water, which, as confirmed by a spokesperson for the Ministry of the Environment, does not exist. You prevented the public from getting answers regarding the lowered fluoride level, which was never made clear at the meeting when you voted on lowering the level. It was never made explicitly clear to the public what the new target level would be. And there was so much confusion and mumbo-jumbo going on in that meeting that Brampton Guardian reporter Roger Belgrave reported that the new chemical was calcium fluoride, the naturally occurring mineral. And it was me that contacted him and said, no, 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 it's not that. It's a chemical, same chemical as before. It's just now one that's derived from calcium fluoride. He corrected that. He also reported that the new target level was 0.5 parts per million. And I told him, no, 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 that doesn't make sense. It contradicts other things that were said during that meeting. He refused to do any fact checking. And so for 4 months, the public was misled, believing that the new fluoride level was 0.5 parts per million when it was actually 0.65 parts per million, 30% higher. And that was eventually confirmed. So none of you contacted the Guardian, I guess, and pointed out that they had made a mistake. Let's see. Oh, and all this could have been cleared up and prevented from happening if I had been allowed to delegate and ask my questions. You prevented us from getting explanations about the fraudulent, grossly misleading, and nonsensical dental fluorosis statistic that was published last year by public health staff that are either grossly incompetent or intentionally deceptive. And it was also signed off on by Commissioner Nancy Polsinelli. You prevented us from getting answers about PILT Public Health's failure to monitor and report on dental fluorosis in a remotely meaningful fashion while falsely claiming that they are carefully monitoring the situation. And I was also complaining about your disturbing consideration of a new policy that would allow the regional clerk to dismiss any complaint on the grounds that he or she considers it to be grounded in conspiracy theory, which of course could easily be applied to water fluoridation since we're often referred to as conspiracy theorists.
Christine, can you just conclude?
And you also prevented us from bringing to your attention any new studies that got published. For example, the September study that was published, this will take me about 30 seconds, new highly relevant study showing that pregnant women with higher levels of fluoride in their urine, which is a marker, a way of measuring fluoride exposure, have children with lower IQs as measured at ages, I believe it was 4 and then 6 to 12. And this was an international study published in September with researchers from the United States, Mexico, and it was headed by the top of the Department of Public Health, the Dalai Lama School of Public Health at the University of Toronto. It was funded by the U.S. National Institute of Health. Still, you're fluoridating our water. And clearly, well, I guess you want me to stop now, so I can stop there if you like it.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Sprovieri.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Christine, for coming forward this morning. I know that you have a busy schedule, and this issue is very important to you. and you're very committed to the cause, and I totally support your position.
I know you
make
do,
it
John. Thank
publicly.
you, because you're our hero.
And I just want to also say that it's almost like water fluoridation has become a word of taboo here in Peel Region, and I agree with you that whatever has transpired is he's totally violating the code of conduct, and I think that the commissioner did a injustice in his report in saying that it is not responsible for looking at whatever council decides. And I just want to read to the council that the reason why I did add Christine to the agenda is because clearly, if anybody has read the Peel Region Council Code of Conduct, what has transpired, what we have been doing on water fluoridation is totally contravening Part 2 of Section A of the Act, where it says, and I'll read it, the Peel Regional Council Code of Conduct, here known as the code, is council's statement governing the conduct of its chair and members of council in a performance of their official functions, and reflects council's commitment to meet the community's expectation of transparent, accountable, and ethical conduct. And I agree with Christine, and I'm surprised that the commissioner did not mention this section of the code. That what we've done, and I believe what we've done is basically stonewall the public. We've passed a motion. Sending it off to the province. The province hasn't responded. Council has acknowledged that there's a problem, there's a concern with the chemical used to fluoridate the water, and yet we're just sitting around and not doing anything about it, even though we're maybe putting a lot of people at risk, people, the most vulnerable, infants and seniors and people with health problems. They may be put at risk, and we're just sitting around for a whole year, waiting around for the province to respond. And here we are a year later, and they haven't even acknowledged our concern. The council concern, which was indicated in the resolution. So thank you, Christine, for coming here and pointing that out. And and it's a shame that this commissioner didn't recognize that section of the code. And I'm hopeful that the new commissioners would be more prudent and really look at the code and treat issues in a fair manner. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest we bring forward 14.3, which was his report.
But I have a question on 14.3, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's what I'm bringing it forward, and you're on the list to ask a question.
Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah, we'll move by Councillor Moore, receipt of the delegation, second by Councillor Palashi. All in favor? Carried.
Residents, especially with industrial waste, especially when you know that a glass of our drinking water has a 1/4 milligram of fluoride,
Thank you,
which is
Christine.
the same amount
Ms.
that
Massey,
everyone
thank
agrees.
you. Okay, I'm going to bring forward the report then. Councillor Sprovieri.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question of staff. In this report, it indicates that there was a couple of complaints and a couple of inquiries made in 2017 during the term of Mr. Swayze's. One of the complaints was mine, it's on the agenda today, against our mayor. But it does not mention any other complaints related to the mayor, and I'm asking if there was no other complaints that was lodged against her, why she submitted a bill for $18,000 for a legal opinion and supposedly on a conflict of interest issue, if there was no complaint that was lodged against her in 2017. Can staff indicate why we would the mayor would, present us with a bill if there was
Councillor
no
Sprovieri,
complaint.
that's his report, not the region's.
Yeah, I know, but I'm asking the staff why.
No.
Well, who can is Mr. Swayze here? Is he
No.
here? So he presents a report, doesn't show up, and expects us to accept this report without even any questions or clarifications? Oh,
I guess we could direct it to him.
That's really unfortunate. I mean, that just goes to show how responsible the person was, and that not being here to defend this or answer questions on his report. That's really not appropriate. Very irresponsible, and I'm glad he's gone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Palashi.
I don't want to follow up on that now. I was under the impression that this was being sent to the current integrity commissioners just for their kind of comments, and then something else was going to come back. It did say in here that it was sent to them for comments. I'm not sure what John's referring to, but I'm trying to shed more light if there's additional information that's going to be coming back.
I think he was making reference to the review of the code of conduct.
Okay.
In that regard.
Okay, my comment was just on the bottom 2 paragraphs, carries over the next page on the, I had asked the question about potential neighbors, homeowners asking questions of their counselors and the pecuniary interest that would come with it if it just so happened that whatever they're referring to increased their property value or whatever, and to see that in here that it states that they don't have to register unless they have a home business. I think it was definitely a concern I had from a number of residents. So I'm just glad to see that it's no longer a concern. If that's that's the ruling, right, from the past integrity commissioner.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
14th, the item then? Okay, someone second it? Councillor Parrish? All in favor then of the receipt? Carried. Thank you. Moving along here, items related to public works, Councillor Groves, if you, oh, sorry, the consent agenda, that's right. If you just take a minute to look through the items that have been identified for consent, if you want to hold any of those. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is 1351 on the consent? If it is, I'd like to pull it. 1351.
It's not on the consent.
8.1 needs to come off.
Okay, 8.1 will hold down. And the item you just referred to, we're holding. So, okay. Councillor Sable.
Thank you. I have one question on 13.1, please.
Okay, so we'll hold that too. Thank you. Any others? Do I have a motion? Okay, would you move that, Councillor Sato? That
Yeah, I will. I'm just trying to turn off my buttons.
moved by
We're playing with it together over here. There we go. Nope.
Moved by Councillor Sato, seconded by Mayor Thompson, that the following matters listed on the February 8th, 2018 Regional Council agenda be approved under the consent agenda, being items 7.2, 3, 4, and 13.3. All in favor?
There's consent. You've got to do recorded.
Oh, it's, yeah, that's right. Recorded vote, please. That carries. Thank you. That'll move us to items related to public works. Councillor Groves, if you chair that section, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. We have first item on the agenda is 7.1. It's here for information. It's a regional official plan measuring and monitoring report 2017, and we have a presentation by Mark Head, Manager, Research and Analysis, Integrated Planning Division. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Dale and members of Council. My presentation this morning provides information on work we've recently completed on monitoring the Regional Official Plan. The Official Plan provides a long-term framework for guiding decisions on growth and development at the regional level, including providing policy on matters related to the environment, natural resources, population, employment, health, and housing. The Regional Official Plan Measuring and Monitoring Report provides a progress update on achievement of planning outcomes. Many municipalities monitor performance, but few municipalities are monitoring comprehensively, and fewer report comprehensively on outcomes specifically related to official plan policies. The first monitoring report was provided to Council in 2006, and this is the region's second report. So the presentation will provide background on the monitoring framework, the indicators that have been used to monitor policy, a summary of results and how information is being used to inform policy updates and next steps. The report helps measure progress towards the goals and objectives of the regional plan, and this slide is just showing some of the broader goals in the regional plan to achieve healthy and sustainable communities, to protect the region's ecosystems, and to manage growth. There are a lot of purposes that the report addresses. It fulfills policy direction in the regional official plan that the plan be monitored on a regular basis as a means to measure effectiveness of policies. It also addresses provincial direction that municipalities establish performance indicators and monitor implementation of policies, including measures related to provincial targets that are now part of the official plan. It also supports the growth management strategy, including monitoring of population and employment growth and land supply. And lastly, it helps inform our current review of the Regional Official Plan, PILT 2041. So the report pulls together a lot of information in a user-friendly format that we feel will be a useful tool to consult with government agencies, stakeholders, and the public. Two types of indicators are included. Performance indicators track policies that have numerical targets, and examples are the regional intensification rate, the greenfield density target, and affordable housing targets. Tracking indicators are included for policies that don't have quantified targets, but we want to measure either quantitatively or qualitatively in relation to an intended goal or direction. So they track performance relative to an intended objective in the regional official plan. The framework includes 36 indicators under 3 themes of natural environment, built environment, and resources, and 8 sub-themes that are key topics in the regional plan. The natural environment theme includes indicators that report on the health and quality of the natural environment with a focus on natural heritage and climate. The resources theme reports on the region's health from a watershed perspective and provides information on resource sectors. The built environment theme includes indicators that report on the region's growth management requirements under provincial policy, as well as housing and broader planning objectives related to achieving healthy and complete communities. So indicators were and needed to be selected based on data availability and whether they were able to measure progress on a region-wide basis. And there's more information in the full report in indicator summary sheets that provide information on what's being measured, how it's being measured, why the measure is important, and what our performance is. The report has been peer-reviewed just to confirm the overall framework and the indicator ratings and the indicator summaries. And copies are available in the Office of the Regional Clerk and have been posted to our website. So in terms of the built environment results, in order to provide a high-level summary, Each indicator was given a performance rating of green, orange, or red to provide an indication of whether there was sufficient progress, insufficient progress, or minimal progress being made to realize the intent of the plan. Gray circles were assigned when there was insufficient information to provide a rating. And this slide is just summary results for the built environment. And typical of each of the theme areas, the results indicated a range of performance from sufficient to insufficient progress, and also areas that aren't achieving progress at the level that's intended in the plan. So the reports are helping us identify priorities for continued monitoring, policy review, and program improvement. And not surprisingly, under built environment, both affordable housing and transportation are areas where progress rated below other measures. And these are key issues that we're hearing from the public in our consultations on the regional official plan review, and are issues that were heard during consultations on the strategic plan. Just getting into this a little in more detail, this is just this slide on annual residential intensification rate is the kind of information that you'll find in the monitoring report, and is an indicator that's selected to measure performance of the built environment. In this case, although intensification rate has fluctuated below the 40% target, on average over 10 years the rate exceeds the provincial target and currently meets policy target in the most recent data year 2016. And in this case, the intensification rate indicator was assigned in orange because performance had fluctuated at times below the 40% target. There is more information in the staff report summarizing built environment results. Key highlights are indicated on this slide. Results indicate that overall progress is being made on community planning objectives as more development is occurring through intensification, and new communities are being built at higher densities than in the past. Housing indicator results show that although greater numbers of PIL households live in ownership housing, it is evident that affordable housing continues to be a challenge, and results also indicate there's very little new supply of purpose-built rental being built. 6 indicators are included in the natural environment theme. Regional planning and public health staff, the region's Office of Climate Change, and the conservation authorities provided data for these indicators. And again, this slide provides a summary, high-level summary of progress and outcomes and measures for the natural environment. I guess a key message here is that climate change is now a prominent issue in planning. Our results in the report indicate a need to update the community greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the region to get a better sense of trends and sources, but also highlighted the need for new policy throughout the regional plan in key theme areas to reduce emissions and address vulnerability to changes in climate. The resources section includes indicators for watershed health, agriculture, and aggregates, and the results indicate a range of performance and an indication that improvements can be made in each policy area. Again, outcomes are summarized here, and more information is in the staff report and the full report. So, in conclusion, the monitoring information in the report does provide an opportunity to systematically benchmark and measure the success of policy across indicators. And this is to understand how policy can contribute to outcomes, and also recognizing that there's a lot of external factors that also influence outcomes, and identify areas where we may need to review and revise policies. So the results are being incorporated into background research, discussion papers, and are being considered in the policy updates being developed under the 5-year official plan review. The information is a basis to support regional official plan amendments and will be taken into consideration in the drafting of policies. And the work supports ongoing growth management and related initiatives, including the growth management strategy, the employment strategy, the long-range transportation plan, and updates to the Peel Housing and Homelessness Plan. Results will be shared with the province to fulfill growth plan monitoring direction. And finally, because we see value in the work, staff will continue to review and improve the indicators and report to council on a regular basis. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mark. I have two speakers on the board. Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mark, and I think every time all of you need to be congratulated. You're doing a review of the official plan. You simplified it so that the public, the residents, the taxpayers have a better understanding and where we're trying to go in a simplified form, and I think it's very good. I have two questions. The first one is slide 10 that you have there, and if you bring that up, you'll see on that one is the community greenhouse gas thing. You have a gray circle on the. I think that's 7. I think what we're looking for is 10. Right there. Community greenhouse gas emissions. I know we've done a lot of data, and I know a lot of the lower tier municipalities have. Is that not useful for what you're trying to do?
Yeah, it is. I think we were just being a little particular, very specific. The region did complete a greenhouse gas inventory on a region-wide basis in 2000, completed that work in 2012, and it established emissions for a base year 2008. So we just wanted to flag this. We really ought to update that emissions profile to understand more carefully trends as connected to provincial to regional policy. So yeah, I would say emissions are not trending broadly in the direction that we'd like, but we just wanted a little more information to pin down a rating, and we'll do that.
Well, I know through Public Works, I'll use two examples. One is what the fleet has done to reduce emissions. Also, the other thing that we need to look at is, well, the work that's been done by walk and roll initiatives. There's been a lot of good work there. I just don't want it felt that it wasn't appreciated or done. I think there's some good data. That I'm just saying, why a gray circle when some of the good work that we even done at this tier, let alone the lower tier, and that's where I'm questioning.
Okay. And we did debate whether we ought to rate or not, and we erred on the caution of gray because we did really want that updated inventory information.
Okay. I have one more. Slide 12. Right there. So you know where I'm going here, on-farm diversification.
Yeah.
To me, this is vital to what's going on. We have to look, especially in Caledon, we got, on-farm markets, we've got, several cideries, we've got, Heatherly's a real good example of a on-farm diversification, along with many others. The challenge is we have an 8 million people market to the south of us here. Not only just Caledon benefits, the region does too. And I think my question is, I can't understand, like at a minimum, I thought we should at least have a yellow circle, because I think this is vital as we go forward. You look at any of the policies that are coming up dealing with agriculture that we're dealing for, what is the key issue? And I see it's there, on-farm diversification, but I think that is one area that I was kind of hoping not to see a gray circle, but at least a minimum of a yellow.
And through you, Chair, I'd like to see that a green circle, hopefully.
Me too.
The reason it's gray, the Canada Census has just released information on this category for the first time. So it's a baseline, and when if we can understand how policy changes and supports, then we can rate, and we will.
Okay. Well, at least one thing, it's on the radar, but I was just saying, I know as far as issues that are concerning agriculture in the future in Peel, and I'm saying Peel because you have issues in Brampton, not just Caledon and elsewhere, I think our biggest forefront on everything that you're going to be looking at is going to be that on-farm diversification. So thanks for recognizing it, but I agree. I wish it was green too. But thank you. Really good report.
Thank you. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Mark. My reference would be to slide 13. aggregates, one of my favorite subjects and one of my most complicated subjects in Ward 1. You say at the last here, but gaps exist in rehabilitation of licensed sites. That's probably the biggest thorn in my resident side, is that we have so many pits that keep opening up, but they never see anything close. And so you've identified gaps exist. You don't have to tell me right now, but maybe you can put it in a memo if it's broad. What do you see as those gaps? Because now we have a number of applications coming forward, and I see obviously, you know, aggregate is important, but we also have to recognize the social needs of the people in the area, the social respect, and getting these guys off license. So, Mark, what do you have a simple answer, and then you can provide me the broader answer in an email after the fact would be great. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we can follow up with more information on that, and there is more information in the full report. Every year we get annual compliance reports from all the licensed operations, and they report on their area of disturbed land and their area of rehabilitated, and it's a difference between those that's the gap. And so we've tracked it over 10 years, and we have the information. There's been improvements, but it doesn't look like the gap is closed, and we want it to get closer so there's a balance, and there's that progressive rehabilitation happening. And it'll be good information for our next meeting with the ministry on inspection and enforcement.
Would you say, Mark, part of that progressive rehabilitation is with the newer licenses, where when you're dealing with the older license, there was no need for that sort of progressive rehabilitation in the old ones that have been sitting there since the 70s? You had a rehab plan, but not, I think the ministry is pushing for progressive. Is that part of your challenges, that you're still dealing with a lot of the old licenses when you reference rehabilitation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. The older licenses have the larger challenges and the bigger gaps. But I think all licenses need to be tracked and monitored, just so we understand that balance is being achieved, that the objectives are being met. But I think it's the older licenses that are the problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark, I just have one question, and that's on water. And so where you've got 6 indicators identifies an opportunity for policy improvement. And I know we dealt with a report on the I&I. So is the I&I all part of this? Because I think climate change relates to really all of these 6 indicators. So is that, and can you tell me where we are on that? Because I know we had a presentation here from Dr. Sachs, and she indicated a whole bunch of things that sort of, it's a cause for concern for me. I know we've got stormwater ponds and ditches and things that we have in Caledon to manage water quality and that. So can you tell me where we are in that with respect to the policy improvements?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yeah, the policy improvements that are being considered in our official plan review under the focus area water resources will be comprehensively looking at how the regional official plan provides direction. So it'll be implementing a systems approach that's being advocated by province, improvements to the way we do watershed planning, sub-watershed planning, stormwater master planning, including low-impact development stormwater and green infrastructure approaches in that. So through those policy improvements, we're going to see over the coming years systematic improvement in the way we make decisions on land use and growth and water. And those decisions ought to help address some climate change vulnerability. There'll be a contributing part. I&I approaches are kind of under the Public Works Water Infrastructure Program. The land use policies will be directing development in the provision of low-impact stormwater measures to help a little bit address that. And we will also be looking at the flood hazard policies and providing some direction on what planning can do to address and contribute to urban overland flooding as well. So there's comprehensive policies to be brought forward in the official plan review.
Okay, great. And I'm guessing you're working with the lower tier municipalities when you're looking at this, because I can tell you that in my area, in Bolton, our downtown core is in the floodplain. It's in a special policy area. There are a number of things that would affect development in that downtown core, and I certainly support and hoping to see redevelopment there. So I'm hoping that you're going to be working with our municipality when we're looking at those things, because the flood risks, we know they're greater because the storms are greater. So are you working with the lower tier?
Yes, through our Planning Technical Advisory Committee, and we'll be working with them to look at draft policies. And I'm familiar with the SPA study for the Bolton downtown, so we'll look at the policies in the regional official plan, make sure they're supporting. There are policies now, and they may not need to be updated, but we'll look.
Great, because I'm hoping you'll be working to help us with our redevelopment of the core. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Spravieri.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mark, for the presentation. I'm particularly interested in the issue of water quality. Now, through my research, I've done a lot of research on this hydrofluorosilicic acid that's been added to our water system here in Peel. Now, according to the safety data sheet, it says that you cannot discharge this into our water, into our lakes, into our streams, into our water supply, this chemical. Yet, from my understanding is that every year we discharge about 650,000 kilograms of this chemical into our water system, which ends up into our streams and rivers and lakes. So I wonder if you can, look at that, this issue, and whether it's acceptable. I know that it goes in drip by drip in all the municipalities around the GTA, but just Peel alone, my understanding is that 650,000 kilograms of this stuff goes in our water. Toronto probably is 5 times that. Then you got Hamilton, you got Oakville, you got all the cities that add this stuff to the water, drinking water. It must be millions of kilograms that's going into their environment, into our lakes, streams, and lake. So according to the safety data sheet, is we shouldn't be dumping this stuff in our environment, and yet we're doing it every day. So I don't know whether your exercise can address this issue and let us know why it's acceptable to put it in drip by drip throughout the GTA and other cities and towns, and yet the safety data sheet says specifically, do not discharge into our water systems at all. Actually, it's a criminal offense, from my understanding. If someone is caught dumping a barrel of this stuff in a river or a lake, somebody go to jail for that. Yet we're doing it here every day at Peel Region. So if you can, I don't know if you can comment on that, or whether you can look at that.
Probably, Councillor Spiveri, I'm just going to ask Mark to take it back, and then maybe just take that as direction, and he can provide you some information on that.
Well, I think he should report back when this report
okay,
comes
so
back.
we'll give him direction, and then I think the CAO is on the board. Thank you, Councillor Spiveri. So we'll
Thank
get David just before Councillor Parrish comes on.
Oh, thank you,
Or would you
Madam.
like Councillor Parrish?
I think Councillor Parrish.
Okay, Councillor Parrish.
A different tact. You go ahead.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, it wasn't related to the last comment by Councillor Sproveri. I just wanted to, I don't need to point out to Council that the public's not interested in what we say we're going to do. They're actually interested in what we do. And the OP, the official plan, is a massive and complex policy document, and our ability to measure the impact of those policies is as equally complex as the policies themselves. And I just wanted to add my recognition to the really groundbreaking work that Mark and the staff have been doing on trying to measure, and actually measuring the impact and bringing it to council. And I think it reflects really well on this council's focus on outcomes and impact. And the document itself is like this. If you want it, we'd be happy to provide you with copies. But I think it is really quite groundbreaking, the work we're doing on this.
I agree. Thank you, David, and thank you to the staff. Councillor Parrish.
I'm sorry, I was busy reading my BlackBerry, so I didn't hear what David said. I hope I'm not going to make a fool of myself. For the 50th time. I was reading a Toronto Star article last week that talked about the heavy pollution of road salt and oil from cars that fall from our bridges. And I know the bridges on the Credit River all have little spouts on the bottom. In the little spouts, you can watch the stuff coming off the road and down into the Credit River. And I remember asking about this a couple of years ago and was told there's no way you can filter it or you could stop it. There has to be a way that you can put something to catch all that under the bridge. But it's quite on purpose. It's a nice little sloped thing, and then there's a trough, and then there's a spigot at the bottom, and the stuff is just dripping there all day long. And apparently the Credit River is really bad. So that I would love to find out, call the Ministry of the Environment and ask them if they can come and make some suggestions on how we could clean that up. That'd be a real shame to keep polluting the Credit River, and apparently it's the worst one in southern Ontario.
Okay. Thank you. I think Councillor Ionika may have an answer for you, Councillor Parrish.
In 24 hours. Carolyn, I saw the same report as well on the CBC, and they referenced the Cooksville Creek. And so as head of the Conservation Authority, I've asked our staff for a report on it tomorrow, which I hope to bring here as well, because I think there's a little bit more to it than was outlined. We are taking some steps. Whether it was a certain surge at any given time, et cetera, remains to be determined. But great point, I picked up on it as well, and we'll be dealing with it at Conservation tomorrow, and I've asked for whatever our findings are to come back, not just to report what's happening. Let's make sure we're doing the right things and we have a solution. So thank you very much, and more to follow.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Ionika. Okay. Mark, thank you for your presentation. I have no more speakers on the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
And moved by Mayor Thompson, second by Councillor Shaughnessy. All those in favor? That's carried. Moving on to item number 8.1. Mayor Thompson, you asked to hold this, and I believe you've got a motion.
Yeah. Or I'm moving it. If you want to second it. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Mayor Thompson.
Yep. We're there. We got it. All I wanted to comment is this is something that's been going on, as most of us have been on council for quite some time. The environmental assessment has not been updated since the early 90s, and a lot of new information has come forward. We've done a lot of studies, and as we've just heard Mark Head, who's done a lot of good research and data that we definitely know. And I think what we're finding is we're doing duplication on information we already know, and we got to get the costs down. We got to cut the costs. The studies are more than what the infrastructure is costing us. So in a roundabout way, AMO, along with all their caucuses, have been working on this with OGRA, which are the experts. So we left it with the experts to come back. Now they're asking us to endorse it. And to help Jeanette and her team out, it's only appropriate to bring it forward so that they can work through it and have a report later in time. But I think it's timely that we need to get it in because we're hitting election year and everything else that's going on.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Thompson. And I know that Jeanette and her team, they've already been doing some work with respect to this as well. Is that correct, Jeanette?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, we've been working with a lot of the associations to try to lend our voice in terms of advocacy and giving some concrete examples where the EA process over time is, increasing cost, increasing length of time, et cetera.
Perfect. Thank you. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Mayor Thompson, second by Councillor Shaughnessy. Madam Clerk, do I need a recorded vote? Okay. Okay. That's carried. Thank you. The next item of communication is 8.2. It's a letter from Town of Caledon with regards to Sylvia Jones's, who's their MPP in Dufferin-Caledon, regarding the GTAA Highway Corridor. It's here for receipt. Moved by Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just, I was going to bring it up when we got to Sylvia's letter, but I might as well do it now. Have we heard anything, just a question to staff, have we heard anything on the GTA West? I was on the MTO website not too long ago, and it still said that they were going to announce it last week. But I don't think that I heard anything last week.
We're never going to get that till after the election.
Is there?
Staff, Jeanette?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, it's been radio silence. Latest word was with the cabinet shuffle, new minister needs to get up to speed, but there's been no commitment.
Oh, isn't that nice?
When a new commitment will be made on terms of making that announcement. They're definitely over the 60 days they advised.
I kind of would like to understand, what do we do now at the City of Brampton, at the region, I'm sure with the Town of Caledon, like this is holding up a lot of, there's a lot of issues here, and I field calls from residents all the time. What are our next steps? What are we doing about this?
Through you, Madam Chair. At a high level, what we've started to do is conversations between us and all three local municipalities looking at the various three scenarios. One is it gets canceled outright, no protections. One is they continue to protect the land but still keep the EA on hold. And third, full steam ahead. Mm-hmm. So we've started those conversations. Halton Region recently spoke to the chair and I in a meeting about, of course, Brampton West and the whole Halton Peel boundary study that was put on hold because it got folded into the GTA West study. So certainly we're starting to have conversations. There is no quick answer I can give you in terms of, step A should be this, B, but we're starting to have those conversations.
Okay, and just a reminder, and as you probably know, Brampton has done more work on this than I believe even the province has done in terms of studies and whatnot, public consultation as well. So if those conversations are had with Brampton and okay.
I've met with Rob Elliott and his team and our team to look at, especially in Northwest Brampton, because we know we need a road there.
For sure.
So what does that look like if there's no GTA West? What DCs have been collected to date, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. Councillor Innes.
Thank you. Is it possible to, I don't think that we probably need to do a motion, but a direction to the chair so that at least that, I know that we're not getting any traction and we're sending letters and we're sending resolutions and we're sending memos, but I think that we at least owe it to our residents to continue to advocate. And I think that a letter from the chair from Regional Council needs to be sent to the minister requesting, I know we don't get the responses that we're hoping for, but I think at least we need to have that letter sent. And also, I did make a request informally through staff that we request a delegation with the minister at OGRA on this very topic, and any of the other municipalities, Brampton or Mississauga, to attend as well if possible for that delegation should it be granted. I think that we need to continue to advocate as much as we can heading into the provincial election to get a response, even though I don't think that we're going to get one. I think that we need to at least continue to act the part to advocate as best as we can moving forward to try to get that response. So if we can have a letter sent on behalf of the region, as well as that request through OGRA, and I know that the town of Caledon as well has made the request to meet with the minister with regards to the same situation, so a joint delegation, however best we can get that delegation and get the ear of the new minister, I think would be greatly appreciated. And perhaps in the letter to direction for the letter that we request a meeting with the minister on this topic. If they're going to give the response that being a new minister, they're not prepared to give an answer on this topic, then it's our responsibility to educate them as to our position. So if we can make that request as well, that would be appreciated.
Councillor Anderson, through you, if I may, on a point of order. I've sent more than one letter to the minister and have met with him. I also raised it as a high priority with respect to their budget when I presented Regent's position in front of Minister Sousa just the other day. So they're well aware of it, and but I have no difficulty sending another letter.
It's a new minister, and that's going to be their new excuse. So if we could, you know, circumvent that as best as possible, I think that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Thompson.
I'm going to throw another scenario out. We just did the Ninth Line lands, and we had all the mayors which participated. We signed on it, I know, with a couple of councillors, but I'm wondering, maybe this time we'll send a letter. Maybe we need to sign it again, because we did get a quick response on the Ninth Line lands. I'm just saying, I think this is something that's important. And, you know, if that's what it takes, I'm prepared to be part of it. But it's the chair's call.
Okay. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Peleshi, second by Mayor Crombie. All those in favor? That's carried. That concludes this portion of the agenda, and it's back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We do have one item related to health. Councillor Moore, if you chair that section, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to invite Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Jessica Hopkins, for her presentation this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be giving you an update on the Ontario Public Health Standards, and so this is relevant to Regional Council's role as the Board of Health. I'm going to start with some background on the new standards, give you a little bit of information about the context, the expectations of the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care for public health, highlight some of the new requirements, and then summarize our next steps. For those of you that have been on council for a while, you will remember back prior to 2008 something called the mandatory programs. And then in 2008, there was the first iteration of the Ontario Public Health Standards. So flash forward 10 years later, this is the first significant refresh of those standards. And the standards are the requirement for public health programs and services that must be delivered by boards of health under the Health Protection and Promotion Act. So this is your legislated requirement. And the standards are supported by protocols. And so those are really very prescriptive step-by-step processes of how public health needs to do work. There are also a set of guidelines which give us direction without telling us step-by-step how we need to do the work. So that's the flexibility piece to meet community needs. It's important to keep in mind, though, that the standards are a minimum requirement, and they don't necessarily encompass everything and the full potential of scope of public health programming to support community health. And I think that this council has recognized that previously with things like seniors' dental health and the investment that you've made in that area. It's not part of the standards, and so clearly the standards don't cover everything that's needed to support population health. So the ministry has defined public health within the standards, and this is a definition that will be familiar to you. It's a population health approach. It's upstream. And I really liked how they recognized that the life course approach is so important, that we have different health needs and different priorities across the lifespan from birth to death. The ministry has also set forth a policy framework for public health, with the ultimate goal being to improve and protect the health and well-being of the population of Ontario and reduce health inequities. They've also named 3 population health outcomes, so improving health and quality of life, reducing morbidity and premature mortality, so death and disease, and reducing health inequity among population groups. And they've laid that out into 4 domains of social determinants of health, healthy behaviors, healthy communities, and population health assessment. The standards have clearly articulated the core public health functions, and these include assessment and surveillance, health promotion and policy development, health protection, disease prevention, and emergency management. And these are very consistent with the work that Peel Public Health is already doing, so we're well positioned for these new standards. The standards also tell us the work that public health needs to be performing. And so there are 4 foundational standards and 9 program standards. And when you think about foundational standards, you want to think about a thread that runs through all of the work that public health does. And so that's population health assessment, so that's data and understanding the status of the health status of the population, health equity, effective public health practice, which is really the technical skills and such as evidence-informed decision-making and end-to-end public health practice about how we perform our work effectively for the community, and emergency management. And I'm not going to go through all 9 program standards, but what you will see listed there are many things, and in fact, we already do all of these things in the community. I don't expect you to read the details of this slide, but this is a new area of the standards which really speaks to strengthened accountability. And I think what the slide demonstrates is the complexity of the processes with the ministry, but also that there is strong alignment, and we really need to be able to demonstrate the impact that we are having on the community. There is also a new requirement on transparency and demonstrating impact. So the ministry is currently working on developing a public health indicator framework that will focus on outcomes, and we expect that around the end of 2018. They are also developing a transparency framework which will include public reporting on the Region of Peel website on the results of routine and complaint-based inspections. So you'll know that some are already there, such as restaurant inspections, but there are more that will be added to that. The strategic plan for public health will be posted publicly, as well as annual performance and financial reporting. So in summary, the standards are an important update. It's been 10 years since the last one. They are also a welcome update. They really do reinforce the core functions of public health, and it really contains a lot of what will build on the work that is already happening in Peel Region. As the guidelines and protocols are being released, we will be analyzing those very carefully. And for any implications that exist, particularly related to resourcing, meeting community needs, we will be reporting back to Regional Council.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hopkins. There's a couple speakers on the board. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chair. Sorry about it. Thank you, Dr. Hopkins, for the information. Just a comment or a question. I'm sure everybody's aware just recently, and the reason I asked for this question is because, from my understanding, is the medical system really relies on the CDC for guidance on many health-related issues. And just recently, it's been disclosed that the chairman of the CDC has recently resigned because there were conflicts because of conflict of interest and so on. Now the question I have for you is that there's there's a lot of people who are saying that the amount of vaccination that's occurring has really increased in the last 10-15 years dramatically. Compared to what was happening 10-15 years ago. Today, infants and children are really given a lot more vaccines than we were when I was a kid. And the reason I asked is obviously since the CDC is there to really guide us on whether this is proper or not, but when the chair owns stocks in the pharmaceutical companies that produce the vaccines, you got to wonder whether, knowing the stock market, people want to increase profits and so on and so forth. Maybe we're over vaccinating our kids these days. Do you know why the amount of vaccination has increased dramatically in the last 15-20 years?
So through the chair, there are 2 issues that you were speaking about. The first is about the Centers for Disease Control, which is an organization in the United States and not the organization that Public Health in Canada generally takes direction from. We have other organizations such as the Public Health Agency of Canada, which is federal, as well as Public Health Ontario, which is an Ontario agency that is committed to research and evidence in public health. The second issue that you raised is around vaccination. And as medical medical officer of health, as a physician, and as a citizen, I strongly support vaccination. It is one of the most effective public health practices that has been implemented since public health began. I think most of us can appreciate the importance of preventing disease before it actually happens. And to get to your specific point about the number of vaccines that exist, I don't think you should be actually comparing vaccines, but the components and the antigens that children are exposed to. So when you think about on an average day, you know, a child will be exposed to tens of thousands of antigens. What's actually in vaccines is far less, and in fact, vaccines have fewer antigens in them now compared to what they had many years ago. To try and simplify it, they're more pure now. They're very safe. There's a very rigorous program for looking at vaccine safety in Canada. That's led by Health Canada. And then the NACI, which is the National Association on Immunization, makes recommendations for all of Canada. It's evidence-based. In Ontario, there's also the Provincial Infectious Diseases Advisory Committee on Immunization, which makes recommendations to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care on policy decisions related to the vaccines that are funded in Ontario. Once vaccines are actually out there in the market, there's also a very rigorous process for monitoring safety. And so public health, in fact, collects information from parents as well as from family doctors about concerns that people have that they may have had an adverse event following immunization. And those are tracked not just in Ontario, but across the country to determine if there are any concerning signals. And so I feel very assured that the vaccine program in Canada and in Ontario and what we deliver here in Peel Region is safe and supports the health of the community.
Well, thank you for that. And through the chair, I was not questioning whether the effectiveness of vaccines or whether I understand that they're necessary. The question I had for you is, why have they increased dramatically in the last 15, 20 years, where a child used to get maybe 4 or 5, now they're getting, I don't know how many, 10, 15, 20 shots?
Yeah.
This is a question really I'd like to you to address.
So through the chair, there are more vaccines now because science has advanced and allowed us to create vaccines that prevent more diseases than what we have had in the past.
Well, from my understanding, there's more sickness today than there was 15, 20 years ago amongst the population, you know, so I don't know whether that's really a good answer or not.
Councillor Spolieri, you asked the question and you got the answer.
Well, it didn't make sense to me, but thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Hopkins, for your presentation. Just a quick question. On my way to work this morning, I was listening to 680 News, and one of the things that they mentioned on there, and it's not really something related to your report, but it's something we've been concerned about, is with respect to opioids and the use of opioids and the concern they have on that. The Toronto School Board are they are providing naloxone kits in the schools, and they are training a couple of staff members in the schools on how to administer naloxone and that sort of thing. Is that something we are looking at doing or thinking of doing?
So through the chair, thank you for the question. We had an opioid stakeholder meeting a couple of weeks ago, and that included school board partners there. And we, in fact, had some conversation about this. So it would ultimately be the school board's decision about whether or not they would want to implement that. But if you look at the data of the people who are dying from overdoses, it does not tend to be school-aged children. Most of the overdoses that we see are happening in private homes. They are in adults, tending from sort of young to middle-aged, men more than women. And so our work in expanding the naloxone program has been very focused on reaching those people who are at most at risk of having overdoses. So we do training in public health targeting that group specifically. The risk in schools for an overdose would be lower than it would be in those other settings, but certainly if the school boards decide that's something they want to pursue, we can work with them on that.
Thank you. And I guess I would be sort of an advocate for just saying exploring it, because I go back to the ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. You don't want it to get into the schools. You want to prevent it from getting into the schools. So I guess I would look at it as sort of a precautionary measure, so that if because it's really, it's not getting better. It's more of that is out there, and I'm going to tell you, kids are, they have access to prescription drugs at home. And so I guess from my perspective, where I would be looking at it is to say, you don't want it to get into the school, so why not maybe train some of those staff so that it's there should something ever occur?
Through the chair, I will, so we are having ongoing conversations with the school boards, and we will definitely continue the discussion with this. The school boards do have within all of their schools, my understanding is staff who are trained in CPR, and so CPR can be provided until EMS is able to arrive, but we will continue to have discussions with the school boards.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ionica.
Thank you. Just one update. How marvelous that we get your report, Dr. Hopkins, and Mark's before on the regional official plan. John, some recent data that I was going through, contrary to what you think is happening with people's health, they predicted that in 2007, the first human being in the world somewhere was born that will live to 150 years old. Wow. They just came out with another study that says in the developed world, so us privileged folks like Caledon, Brampton, Mississauga, great medical facilities, services like ours, the region of Peel, they predict if you're born in 2018, on average you will live to 100 years old by that time. The bad news is so many of those getting to 100 will outlive their bodies, their minds, their money, or a combination of all of the above. And getting back to Mark, if you haven't built sustainable communities where they can look after themselves, where they can walk about, where the affluence of wealth, the paradox, you start making money, you stop having kids, so you don't have a social support system, where our millennials are saying, I'm not going to die in place, I think San Jose is a nice place to live, or I think if I get a job offer in New York, I'm leaving, so we lose our family support systems. There will be shut-ins in a suburban environment that for 30 years you've got to bring Meals on Wheels or bring them in for dialysis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how poignant that we get your report and all the good news of how great our health is, and we've got to catch up on the land use front and build the great European cities that sustain you and keep you alive and allow you to look after yourself. So I take a great deal from what you've said today and from Mark's presentation, and I think we're on the right track, but we have a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, those who put together the data hadn't met Mayor McCallion for it.
There you go.
Councillor Sprovieri.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Ionica, for. I'm well aware of that, and people are living longer, and I'm also aware that unfortunately, when people get over a certain age, they need a lot of medical assistance, and it's due. And the long age actually is due because most people are living on pills these days. You know, when they get like when they get older. I know I have a lot of my friends. They have a whole box of pills they take just to stay alive, and so that's a problem that we're living longer, but we're not living healthier, and that's putting a big burden on our system, and I don't know how it's going to be sustained because it's going to be a huge problem when we get old. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe the two of you can go for a coffee and a fireside chat afterwards. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the report. There are a couple of things that I wanted to ask for maybe future information to come back. One, on the discussion of opioids and the fact that fentanyl is increasing on the rise, especially I think it's called truck fentanyl. I believe I've heard car fentanyl? Yeah. Or truck. I drive a truck, sorry. I don't believe in cars. For me, it's truck. and the fact that something that's so minute that the size of a crumb can kill you, and this being on the rise has the potential to take over and leave opioid overdoses in its wake. So the future of that and what we're doing here at the Region of Peel to prepare. Also, we talked about vaccinations and medication, and something else that's on the rise is they label it superbugs, and there's one in particular, and I think it had to do with strep throat or something, but the fact that there's really nothing that we can do for some of these, and maybe vaccination or over-vaccination may be the cause of some of these superbugs, is kind of what, you're shaking your head. No head shaking. There was that, and don't shake your head.
I can't buy one.
And then my final thing is, I realize that this is a broad scope report of the region of Peel, and, I always, whenever we're talking about health, I always have to bring up the fact that, Brampton Civic Hospital is not a good, I guess, to be more specific in terms of just Brampton Civic Hospital and the fact that we're treating patients in hallways. Patients are staying in hallways for days. I always say, I can't remember what I call it, but I hate using the word mental health. It's a box that we put people in and that we shouldn't, but the issues that we're having with those types of patients in the hospital and what we're doing. I know it's a provincial issue, but with Brampton Civic Hospital and complete lack of funding, underfunded, and the fact that it's the busiest hospital in Canada and it shouldn't be.
So, through the chair, I was just going to say that there will be a report coming to council on opioids, and we will specifically address your issue at that point in time. And regarding the Brampton Civic Hospital, that is outside of the jurisdiction of public health, and so that is under the jurisdiction of the local health integration network, so it'd be the Central West LHIN for that particular issue. But certainly, from an upstream perspective, public health will continue the work to support mental health and wellness in the community in the hopes of preventing people from ending up in hospital.
Sure, but regardless whose jurisdiction it is on, it is our people that go to the hospital. Maybe we can reach out to them and have them bring back a report on the health and balance of Brampton Civic Hospital in the future.
Okay. I have no further speakers on the board. It is a report that's here for information as well as the delegation. Councillor Gibson, would you like to move receipt of both? Seconded by Councillor Miles. All those in favor? That's carried. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. There's one item with respect to human services, so I'd ask Councilor Medeiros to take the chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Members of Council, you have before you a report regarding Daniel's Affordable Housing Project. Are there any questions? Councillor Parrish.
No questions. I'm just delighted to see it's coming this far. It's an amazing project. It should be featured in the Toronto Star somewhere. They always leave us out on the really good stuff, but it's a great project. Congratulations to Councillor Kovac for bringing it into his ward. He's a trooper.
Thank you, Councillor Parrish. Councillor Kovac.
Well, through the chair, Councillor Parrish has gotten quite a bit of credit on this file, and she's even popped up in the Toronto Star, so I commend her for the active lead she has taken. It's been great partnership, privately and publicly, and I think we're all proud of that, being that Daniels has earned the title of being a very reputable builder, but in city center with about 35,000 residents, what better area really in Peel to be receiving an injection of new affordable rental housing? And we're going to be seeing in the next 10 years a doubling of the population, so I think it's quite an appropriate spot. It supports our housing strategy at the city, the region's affordable housing priority, and really just a great example of a public and private partnership.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Kovac. Seems to be harmony amongst Mississauga councillors. And can I ask you, Councillor Kovac, to move it? So moved by Councillor Kovac, seconded by Councillor Parrish. All in favor? Carried. Oh, recorded vote. And back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We're on items related to enterprise programs and services. Councillor Fonseca, if you chair this section, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 13.1 is the trade agreement impacts to procurements for the region of Peel. Councillor Sato, you held this.
Thank you. Just a very quick question to staff on page 2 of the report. It's 2, yeah. The chart that talks about increased competition and vendor participation. Now, I know there's nothing, I mean, we're doing this, so it's not a question of how can we get around it. But the first impact box spoke about the time frame that is going to be extended on projects. So you've said that there will be a longer bid open periods, 30 days from the current 14. And it also, I guess my question is, how will this impact timing on, in particular, public works projects that we usually try to get the bids, the tenders in as early as possible after the budget is approved, and so that the time frame, because with the winter, of course, we have a short time frame for working, and we want to get those projects literally in the ground as early as they possibly can. So doubling the time for the bids, is that going to impact our ability to have the contracts awarded? And are we going to then have 2 to 3 week delays in getting projects started?
Thank you for the question through the chair. There is a process in the legislation that allows us to pre-post upcoming bids on the website that allows us to cut back when we have the specific timelines of the project. So we can pre-post up to a year in advance. So we're actually working through the process with each of the client groups to look at how do we pick and choose the right mechanisms that allow for ensuring that the right projects get tendered at the right time and meet those objectives while at the same time complying with the legislation, which ultimately will deliver better value and better competition. But we don't want to delay those projects, so we are working through that. And there is a toolkit in the toolkit, an option to pre-post up to a year in advance of tenders that are coming up. That'll allow us to expedite the projects once they're fully on board.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. I'll move the report.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Councillor Sato. So moved by Councillor Sato, seconded by Councillor Mahoney. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 13.2 is use of corporate resources for election policy with an attached appendix. There is a recommendation, so seeing no one on the board, moved by Councillor Grove, seconded by Councillor McFadden. And this is recorded vote. Councillor Yanika? Vote. And that passes. Thank you very much. Item 13.3 was on the consent agenda. Move to item 13.4, which is supply of managed connected meeting rooms. Seeing no one on the board, this is a recommendation, so we need a recorded vote. Moved by Mayor Jeffrey, seconded by Councillor Downey. And that passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 13.5. This is the report from Robert Swaitsy, Integrity Commissioner. Councillor Sprovieri. Was this already? No. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In reading this report, I was a bit disappointed at, on the report itself. First, the Commissioner indicates that he found he has no jurisdiction in considering whether the municipal conflict of interest has been violated, and that the code of conduct does not expressly make a breach of the municipal conflict of interest a breach of code. But when I read the code, the regional code of conduct, which I have a copy here, I believe that that's not correct. Just if you look at, and you probably don't have a copy, but I'll read it. Contact Section F of the rules regional councillors. It says, members' interest. The regional chair and members of council will serve their communities so that the public interest is upheld and is the members' primary consideration. The second point to that is the regional chair and members of council will not create a real or apparent conflict of their private interest with the public interest and will act proactively to avoid such conflict to the best of their ability. And then the next point says the regional chair and members of council will not use improper influence or be improperly influenced such that personal private interests are promoted over the public interest. Now, the reason I mention that is because and based on the commissioner's report, it appears to me that, well, according to the report, there was no complaints lodged against Mayor Jeffrey in 2017 for any conflict of interest or any other, or even the conflict of interest or else the code of conduct. So there was no complaints lodged against her. So the question is, why would the mayor present council, the public, with a bill to pay for some dubious legal opinion that she obtained?
Point of order, Madam Chair. On a point of order, Councillor Sprovier, sorry,
Hey,
Madam Chair.
you're the chair?
No, I've done a point of order.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the chair is allowing me.
All right, go ahead.
So, Councillor Sprovieri, we dealt with
Yeah,
this
that's right.
before.
Yeah, but-
So I'm not sure
No,
why
I'm
this
not
is
questioning
coming.
whether we,
I'm not sure why we're debating this, because council has dealt with it. A resolution was passed.
that's right.
With respect to the legal bills.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure this is the appropriate forum to be
well,
bringing this.
This is
and
related to my complaint to the mayor about the
Councillor
mayor's.
Sprovieri,
Okay.
I don't think, in my opinion, but I'll look to the clerk, that it is not related to
Well,
this.
it certainly
So-
is. The whole complaint was based on that bill payment conflict. So I can certainly make reference to that because that's what it was all about.
Councillor Sprovieri, this is for receipt.
Right.
Earlier on in the agenda, you did raise this question.
Right.
There could be direction back to, or something back to the Integrity Commissioner, but this has been dealt with, and this is for receipt. I will
No,
look
it hasn't
to
been
the
dealt
clerks
with.
for this.
It has not been dealt with. I pulled it out for discussion. Okay, so it's not being dealt with. We haven't received it yet. I pulled it out for discussion.
Yes,
So-
with respect, you did raise this question earlier in the agenda when you brought forward item 4.3.
Right.
And to the chair's comments, it was suggested that your comments be sent to the Integrity Commissioner, who is not here today.
No, I have a different motion, Madam Chair. Just hear me out.
Let me go to clerks
Hear me out
first.
first, let me finish my comments, and then I have a motion to present. Please.
Yes.
All right, there's no motion yet. I'm just questioning the report. I'm questioning the Integrity Commissioner's report here, that he says that he found he has no jurisdiction in dealing with the complaint.
Okay.
Well, I
Councillor
disagree with
Sprovieri,
that.
I'm going to go to the clerk.
There isn't a motion on the floor at this time to be speaking to.
But I'm
so
speaking to this report.
If you're speaking to the report, but the report is the Integrity Commissioner's
Right.
report,
So I'm saying
not
that,
the issue of the
Okay.
complaint.
So I'm saying that I don't agree with the report because I believe the commissioner had authority to address the complaint, and
Councillor
and he
Sprovieri.
brushed it off.
Councillor Sprovieri.
Yeah.
We have dealt with, this is receipt of this report. You raised this earlier
No,
in
this
the
is
agenda.
that was a different
If you
item.
have a motion on the floor,
That
put the
was-
motion on the floor and you can speak to the
That was,
motion.
well, you need to know why I want to put a motion, first of all.
Councillor Sprovieri,
okay?
if
First
you
of
would
all,
like to speak
I'm
to
not-
a motion,
I am not satisfied.
put the motion on the floor.
I'm not satisfied with this report. I believe that the Integrity Commissioner did have authority to investigate, and he says
Counselor
no.
Sprovieri, with all due respect.
Yeah.
You have spoken to this
That
when
was-
you
no,
brought
that was a
forward
different item.
14.3. This is not a different item. This item is for receipt. You have spoken to this.
No, I've not.
Yes,
This
you
is
have,
13.5.
Counselor Sprovieri.
We've dealt with
I will go back to
13.3.
clerks. There needs to be a motion
Well,
put on
Madam
the
Clerk,
floor.
we dealt with item 13.3 before when we had the delegation. Now we're dealing with 13.5.
Put your motion on the floor, and then you can speak to the motion.
Okay, so my motion is that because I don't agree with his finding, that I believe that he had authority to investigate, and I'm asking, motion is that we refer this to the Ombudsman of Ontario to investigate this whole matter, whether there was a conflict of interest, and whether the bill that we paid, the public paid, was legitimate because there was no complaint issued. And so I'm putting a motion forward that we refer this to the Integrity Commissioner to investigate whether the mayor's, yes,
Councillor
to
Sprovieri,
investigate the conflict, the violation of the conflict of interest and the violation of the the conflict of interest, and also the code of conduct. I'm asking for this, Madam Chair, to be referred to the Ombudsman to investigate. Okay?
So is that your motion?
Yes.
Could you put the wording up on the screen, and you need a seconder?
Do I have a seconder? Okay.
Put the wording up on the screen.
Well, I can't put it on the screen.
No, I'm sorry, I was referring to clerks. Please put the motion on the screen. And then others on the, I would request that others on the list be speaking to the motion.
Point of order?
Point of order, oh, yes.
Point of order, I'm just inquiring whether we require 2/3 majority to reopen this matter since we've dealt with it and voted on it. It's your reopening.
I'll look to Catherine.
The motion that was presented, and you'll see it in a few moments, would require a reopening on the portion where he's talking about the payment of the actual account. That has been dealt with, and it would require 2/3 to open it. If that portion is removed from the motion, which you'll see in a second, they're just typing, and just talking about the code of, the conflict of interest, that is a topic that we're discussing today. It has not already been decided, so it would not require a 2/3. But the motion, the way it's written now, is really two parts, and the one part would require 2/3. So you would like the motion split? And
I'm just waiting for the motion to come on the screen so we all know what we are speaking to. Asked. So this is the full motion? Okay.
So work in progress.
Again, I'm requesting anyone on the board a reminder that you will be speaking to the motion. To be put on the floor so that we know what we're speaking to. So, Councillor Sprovieri, the motion's here. We need a seconder. Councillor Moore is seconding. So, Councillor Moore, you speak to the motion?
Madam Chair, I'll speak to the motion, but is there a reason I can't speak to the substance of the report? If I have questions or if I have comments I wish to make on the report? I mean, I don't see why not. So
yes,
well, I wish.
will look to.
As it relates to the conflict, yes.
Okay.
Not as it relates to the
Okay,
actual
I'll speak to them
payment.
separately.
Yeah.
I agreed to second the motion. I don't think it's going to pass, but I want to remind Councillor Sprovieri and anybody here today and anybody who wishes to watch a videotape of today's meeting that anybody can take this to the Ontario Ombudsman. I think in the interest of transparency and accountability, we need to take some ownership of that around here, and that's why I think it would be great if this council were to do it in addition to what may come from the community as well. But I see absolutely no harm whatsoever. In fact, I think this is probably a perfect example of what should go to the Ontario Ombudsman. I was not anticipating that, but I had some comments that I wanted to make separately. And I want to follow up on, or just sort of reiterate what the CAO said earlier on a previous report. He says the public don't care what we do or what we say about accountability and transparency. They care about what we do. And so I think that the report before us gives us an opportunity to show that we are committed to accountability and transparency. So through you, Madam Chair, I have a question for the Mayor of Brampton. Will you agree to voluntarily reimburse the taxpayers of the Region of Peel for legal advice in excess of $18,000 that this council previously agreed to pay?
Point of order, point of order.
Given you have admittedly attempted, no, I'm sorry, it's right in the report where Mayor Jeffrey admitted that she breached the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act.
Councillor Moore, I'm going to look to
And so in that context, I'm
clerks to
asking,
this.
since she has admitted that she breached the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, will she reimburse the taxpayers of Peel? It's a question through you, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
To the Mayor.
Councillor Moore, on a point of order, I'm going to look to clerks with regards to, would this be, you would ask the question, could you ask questions from within the report?
The report
I
identifies.
am asking
Thank you.
clerks, I am asking clerks, if this, your question here goes to reopening the report, which would need 2/3. So clerks, Catherine, could you please respond to that?
It's not, with the greatest of respect, Madam Chair, I'm not asking the council reverse the decision. I'm asking the mayor if she will reimburse the Region of Peel.
This has been, as is in the report, addressed in the report by the Integrity Commissioner, the matter has been dealt with. So I'm asking as a point of order to clerks, if this question that you have raised would mean reopening the question, which would take 2/3, which is different than speaking to the report.
The purpose of 2/3, just to go back to first principles, the purpose of having a 2/3 majority required to reopen an issue is to show the will of the assembly having an interest to discuss something that they've already discussed in the past. So as that topic has been discussed, council did make a decision. I think if you're going to be discussing it in a way that council is looking at the decision again, and it's something that's already been spoken to, that it requires 2/3 to talk about it again.
I understand. It wasn't a question to this council. It was a question to one member of this council.
But we're
However,
at the assembly.
I will accept your, I will accept, that's fine. I accept the clerk's interpretation. Speaking to the, again, to the report on the Code of Conduct complaint, simply a comment. I believe that Mayor Crombie and Councillor Medeiros owe the taxpayers an apology because you have an obligation not to
Councillor
engage in conversation
Councillor Moore.
with any member with
Okay, point of order.
Can I have a
Councillor
point of
Moore.
order? Was
Councillor
never,
Moore.
I don't, point of order, I don't know why Councillor Medeiros never confirmed any communication, never confirmed receiving the motion.
It's in the
never
report,
confirmed,
Councillor.
So the report, no one spoke with me.
I'm speaking to the report,
So Councillor
Councillor
Moore, I would
Medeiros.
expect an apology, please.
I'm not
I would expect an
apologizing.
apology
I'm
for something that was
referring
never
to-
Okay,
confirmed.
point of order.
I would
Councillor
expect an
Moore.
apology.
I'm clarifying.
Councillor
Political
Moore.
theater,
I
wasting
have-
time. This is what this is.
Councillor Moore, I have
And
given
Councillor
you
Moore, this is an
leeway.
embarrassment, as you.
I have given you leeway to make comments on the report, which has already been discussed, and
This
a
report
report
has not-
brought forward.
Well, this report has not been discussed on today's
Point of
agenda.
order. Point of order. Back to the clerks. Back to the clerks. The response was, if you're going to question what has already been questioned and reviewed and discussed by council in the report and voted on, this is receipt of a report by the Integrity Commissioner. And as to the clerks, as to Catherine, the response is that you need to reopen the question. So you have now asked 2 questions that would be discussion of something that has already been discussed by council. So I am asking that you either, if you have any other comments to make on the Code of Conduct complaint report, that you make those comments. If not, you speak to the motion that is on the floor. Thank you.
I don't know when it is not appropriate to ask questions on a report that is here for receipt. We do it all the time. We had a presentation from the medical officer of health that was here for receipt.
With all
And
due
for
respect,
information.
Councillor Moore, I will go back as a point of order and get clarification again from Catherine as to if these questions are appropriate on a point of order to be asked. Catherine, could you, the 2 questions that have been asked?
It wasn't a point of
Or
order.
comments?
I believe the issue is talking about it before it's been reopened with the 2/3 vote. It's not that you're not talking about an issue. You're right, you do talk about reports that are here for receipt. But if the issue has to be reopened first.
I'm not asking for an issue to be reopened. I'm asking for the opportunity to speak to statements that are in item 13.5, the report from the Integrity Commissioner. Since when is it not appropriate to make comment, ask questions, seek clarification on anything that is in an information report? And quite frankly, I sat here all day. I don't know that we have dealt with this report previously today. I heard responses to Councillor Sprovieri earlier that we've already dealt with this, we've already dealt with this. We have not already dealt with this issue, this report today. Since when is it not okay to seek clarification on a report for information? That's the clarification I'm looking for. Somehow we're supposed to pretend this report is invisible and just, maybe it should have been in consent.
Councillor Moore, It's a matter of process. If you would like to
And I understand
speak
process as
to
well as anybody else does,
these-
Councillor Fonseca.
if you would like to have this discussion based on process, you would have to ask for a 2/3 reopening to have that discussion,
I'm
correct?
not asking for the item to be reopened. I am not, and nor have I ever asked for the item to be reopened. I'm not asking council to revisit the decision that was made previously. If that was my intent, I would have put a motion forward. I did not do that. It's not my intent. It is not my, the report is here. Can any member of the public come forward and ask questions about this report? Could they have got on the agenda today to ask questions of clarification on this, or would they get the same response? Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Councillor Unica.
Madam Chair, I would call the questions on all matters seemingly related to items 13.5, 14.3, and 14.4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Unica. So the motion is on the floor. The first motion moved by Councillor Sprovieri, seconded by Councillor Moore, that the report listed as item 13.5.
Councillor Fonseca, if I
Yes.
may, you have to call the vote on the call the question first.
Apologies. So, Councillor Unica is asked to call the question. All in favor?
Just a second. Councillor Sprovieri has requested to be a recorded vote, so just give
A
me second
recorded
here.
vote. This is on calling the question.
Can I rise on a point of order? I'm going to rise on a point of order. Because I really don't understand what's happening here. We have a report from an integrity commissioner that's giving us his findings, and members of council are asking some questions of the report from the integrity commissioner. It hasn't been dealt with. We don't need 2/3 to reopen. We're not reopening. We just have an integrity commissioner report. But wait, excuse me, this is in.
Councillor Miles.
No, I'm on a point of order, and this is really inappropriate. All the councillor has asked is, there is a report, she wants to ask questions of it. That's totally appropriate. She's not asking to reopen anything.
Councillor Miles.
So I don't understand why this is happening, because we have reports
Councillor
all the
Miles.
time. No, it's my point of order. You need to allow me to have my point of order. This is, and I would like the clerk's ruling. When we receive a report, are we allowed to ask questions of a report that's here for receipt?
Councillor Miles.
No,
With
I'm
all
asking
due
the clerk.
respect, I asked the clerk 3 times. Out of respect of Councillor Moore, I went to the clerk 3 times to ask about the questions that Councillor Moore raised. I will again, out of respect for Councillor Moore and yourself, go to the clerk, go to Catherine, and ask as a point of order, what is the proper procedure with regards to the questions that have been asked on the report and the motion on the floor?
Yes, council can ask questions on reports and discuss reports that are on the agenda for receipt.
Thank you.
Yes. If there is a willingness to discuss a decision that has already been made, that requires a 2/3 vote.
That's right.
But yes, you can ask questions on a report that's there for receipt. Call the question vote has been moved, and we're waiting to vote on that. That's the next order of business.
The question has been called.
On a point of order, the clerk just ruled that we were allowed to ask questions on a report that was here for information. And yet when Councillor Sprovieri went on the board, you told him he had to put a motion on the floor before he could speak to the report that was before us. So which is it? Did he have to put the motion on the ombudsman forward, or could he have spoken on the report? The clerk just said it's here. We could ask questions. It's a point of clarification.
I requested clarification from Catherine, and yes, questions can be asked on the report. However, if the questions are around decisions that have already been made, then there needs to be a 2/3 vote to reopen the matter. That is what Catherine put forward. And that is when I asked Councillor Sprovieri to put a motion on the floor, because his questions were around a matter that had already been decided. With all due respect, Councillor Sprovieri.
We never discussed and voted on this report.
Oh my goodness, okay.
People who don't disagree with you to challenge the chair to vote on it. Yes. Challenge the chair and we'll vote. Just do it. We're gonna sit here all day.
Yes.
So challenge her.
This is not the motion I put on the floor either. It's incorrect.
Vote right now is on calling the question.
That is right.
Once you call the question, you can correct your motion.
No, we're only voting.
We're voting on calling the question.
If you don't want to do it, challenge the chair.
That's right, I've called the vote.
All right, let's vote. Do you want to vote?
On calling the question.
How can you call a question if the motion is not even the proper?
That's to reopen.
That's your problem. You gotta have the proper motion before you call the question.
This is to,
Challenge the chair knowing what she's doing.
Catherine, take the vote now, Catherine. Come on.
I've called the question. Has everybody voted?
Everyone voted, Catherine?
Councillor Miles.
Voting on,
Vote. We're voting on whether we're voting.
and that carries.
I know.
That carries. Okay. Councillor Sprovieri, is this has been amended to the second portion, okay.
Madam Chair, on a point of order. So I didn't really know what the motion was going to look like prior to this, so now it would appear that I will have a conflict of interest on this, so I will excuse myself from this vote.
And that's why we need a motion on the floor.
Okay, yes, that's right. Thank you.
Well done.
Are we waiting for the second? Councillor Sparvieri, we would.
This is to send it to.
Okay, so. They're two separate motions. Okay. So we're voting on this motion. Councillor Yannicki, you're on the board?
No, I've got mine, I'm done.
Could the board be cleared? Councillor Sparvieri, you're on the board? No? Okay.
Are we voting?
Yes, voting. On the motion on the screen. It's a recorded vote. What's the vote? And the vote does not pass. The second motion is on the screen.
Which is moved by Councillor Sparvieri. And the seconder is Councillor Moore for the second portion as well?
We need 2/3 for this one. 2/3 for this.
Still
So-
need a seconder.
So first we need a seconder for this. Councillor Moore, okay, Councillor Moore. And then we need to vote on 2/3 first.
No, they need 2/3.
Two-thirds on this.
Oh, yes.
Under the new rules, which is next time.
It needs 2/3. Yes, so this vote needs 2/3 to pass. Vote now, recorded vote. We're voting on the motion on the screen. It needs 2/3 to pass.
Same votes.
And the motion is defeated.
Very sad day.
And now the vote to receive the report. It was called as well.
Receive it.
Yes, we need a vote to receive the report, and this is a hands vote. Moved by Mayor Crombie, seconded by Councillor Carlson. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries. Okay, and moving on to communications. We have 2 items of communication left. 14.1 is a letter dated January 12th from Jennifer Evans, Chief Peel Regional Police. Moved by Councillor McFadden, seconded by Councillor Gibson. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Parrish?
So I'm on 14.4, I'll move receipt.
It's already been, the question was called on those.
We didn't
to
vote on it. No, we didn't. She didn't call the vote.
Councillor Anika called the question on all
Yeah.
those items.
Councillor Yannicka called
So
on
it's been received?
Yes.
Perfect.
And I believe that is it for me. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. That moves us to order, please. That moves us to bylaws. Moved by Councillor Shaughnessy, seconded by, oh, she's not there. Oh, yes, she is. Councillor Shaughnessy, seconded by Councillor Sato. That bylaw listed on the Regional Council agenda being bylaw 9-2018 be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the Regional Chair and the Regional Clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All in favor? Carried. Motion moved by Councillor Madero, seconded by Councillor Kovac, that the bylaw 10-2018 to confirm the proceedings of Regional Council at its meeting held on February the 8th, 2018, and to authorize the execution of documents in accordance with the Region Appeal bylaws relating thereto, be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the Regional Chair and the Regional Clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. And motion moved by Councillor Downey, seconded by Councillor Carlson, to adjourn the meeting. All in favor? Carried.